The massive salvage ship Starseeker drifted silently through the debris field at the edge of the Arcturus system. Its purple-tinged hull reflected the distant starlight as Captain Reed stood on the bridge, his 4 eyes scanning the holographic displays surrounding him. Another worthless field of space junk, First Officer Morgan grumbled, her antenna twitching with frustration. We've been out here for 3 cycles with nothing to show for it. Captain Reed was about to agree when one of the sensor operators called out. Captain, large mass detected at coordinates 227 Mark 84. It's big, sir. Show me, Reed ordered, his lower eyes focusing on the ship's operations while his upper pair watched the main screen. The image shifted, and there it was, a dark shape against the stars, larger than their own vessel. Magnification times 10, he commanded. The image zoomed in, and a collective gasp filled the bridge. Floating before them was a warship, its dark hull scared but largely intact. It was unlike anything the crew had seen before, with harsh angular lines and what appeared to be primitive chemical thrusters alongside more advanced drive systems. Is that a human vessel? Morgan asked, moving closer to the screen. I've never seen one in person. Reed nodded slowly. Computer, analyze hull markings. After a moment, the ship's AI responded. Hull identification confirmed. Earth vessel designation, HMS Thunder. Construction date, approximately 300 Earth years ago, during their first interstellar war period. The bridge crew exchanged looks of amusement. 300 years was ancient by modern standards. This ship would have been built when humans were just learning to leave their solar system. Look at those weapon mounts, the weapons officer laughed, pointing at the massive turrets along the ship's spine. They're physical rotating structures. Can you imagine having to actually turn your weapons instead of using energy matrices? Reed smiled at his crew's amusement, but kept his eyes on the prize. Primitive or not, that much metal is worth a fortune in salvage. Prepare boarding teams. Full environmental suits. That thing's probably not airtight anymore. 3 hours later, Reed led the first boarding team through the emergency airlock they'd cut into the Thunder's hull. Their powerful lights illuminated corridors that hadn't seen brightness in centuries. Dust floated in zero gravity, sparkling in their beams. This is ridiculous, Engineer Trell said, running his scanner over a nearby wall. The wiring is actually physical copper and fiber. Not even basic quantum pathways. How did they ever get this thing to fly? The humans were resourceful, if nothing else, Reed replied, though he shared his engineer's amusement. The entire ship was like a museum piece, filled with manual controls, physical switches, and actual printed circuit boards. They made their way to the bridge, having to manually force open several doors that would have slid automatically on any modern vessel. The human command center was surprisingly spacious, with large viewing windows instead of holographic displays. Captain, Morgan called out, wiping dust from a plaque on the captain's chair. You should see this. Reed floated over, shining his light on the metal plate. The words were in English, an old human language still used in some parts of space. HMS Thunder, Earth Defense Force. When technology fails, thunder still rolls. How poetic, Trell snorted. And how typical of humans to rely on outdated philosophy instead of proper technological advancement. Reed was about to respond when his communicator buzzed. Captain, we've completed initial salvage estimates. Even as scrap, this vessel would cover our operating costs for the next 2 years. A smile spread across Reed's face. Perfect. Begin preparations for towing. We'll take it back to Station 47 and break it down there. He looked around the bridge one last time. Shame to scrap something so historic, but business is business. As the boarding teams began their work, none of them noticed the small red light that briefly flickered on a dusty panel, nor did they understand the significance of the ancient ship systems quietly recording their presence. Deep in the Thunder's heavily shielded core, centuries-old circuits began a slow, deliberate boot sequence that would take days to complete. The aliens laughed at the antiquated systems and primitive design, never suspecting that every feature they mocked was deliberately engineered for a purpose they couldn't comprehend. The Thunder had been built for a time exactly like this, when overconfidence in advanced technology would be humanity's enemy's greatest weakness. Station 47 buzzed with activity as the Star Seeker pulled into its massive docking bay. The ancient human warship, now secured by heavy towing beams, drew crowds of onlookers. Most had never seen a human vessel of this age, and the sight of its battle-scarred hull caused quite a stir. Captain Reed stood in the station's busy hiring hall, reviewing applications for a specialist who could help them safely dismantle the old warship. Most modern engineers weren't familiar with ancient human technology, and Reed didn't want his crew injured by some forgotten defense system. "Sir," Morgan said, approaching with a datapad, "there's a human engineer on the station. He's older, but his credentials show experience with military vessels." Reed's upper eyes blinked in surprise. A human. Here. It was unusual to find humans this far from Earth-controlled space. "Where is he?" "Corner table. The one with white hair." Reed turned to look. In the far corner sat an elderly human male, calmly drinking from a steaming cup. Despite his age, he sat with perfect posture, his weathered hand steady as he raised the cup to his lips. "Well," Reed decided, "let's at least talk to him." As they approached, the human looked up. His eyes, though aged, were sharp and alert. A small smile crossed his face. "Captain," he said, standing smoothly. "James Walker. I hear you have an interesting salvage project." Reed gestured for him to sit and took a seat himself. "You've heard correctly. We've recovered an old human warship, HMS Thunder. We need someone familiar with the technology to help us safely break it down." At the mention of the ship's name, something flickered in Walker's eyes. "Thunder-class battleship," he said quietly. "Interesting find. May I ask where you discovered her?" "Deep space, Arcturus sector," Morgan answered. "Do you know these vessels?" Walker's smile grew slightly. "You could say that. I served on Thunder's sister ship, the HMS Lightning, many years ago, part of the last active squadron before they were decommissioned." A group of younger aliens at a nearby table laughed. "They're hiring a human to scrap human junk," one called out. "How fitting." Walker ignored them completely, his focus entirely on Reed. "I'd very much like to see her," he said. "Those ships, they were special." Reed studied the human carefully. There was something about Walker's calm demeanor that seemed to hint at deeper knowledge. "The pay isn't high," he warned. "It's just a salvage job." "Money isn't my concern," Walker replied. "Some things are more important than credits." Before Reed could respond, his communicator buzzed. "Captain," came Engineer Trell's voice, "we're having trouble accessing the ship's systems. Everything's locked down tight, and none of our override codes are working." Walker's expression didn't change, but his eyes seemed to twinkle. "Old Earth military vessels can be quite stubborn," he said. "Lots of mechanical and electronic safeguards. I could help with that." Reed made his decision. "You're hired. When can you start?" "Right now." An hour later, they stood in the Thunder's main engineering section. Walker moved through the space with familiar ease, his hands running gently over consoles and panels that had been dark for centuries. "Amazing," he muttered. "She's in better shape than I would have expected." "Better shape?" Trell scoffed. "This technology is ancient. Look at these primitive displays and manual controls. No neural interfaces, no AI integration points. It's practically Stone Age engineering." Walker turned to face the alien engineer, and for a moment, his friendly demeanor shifted to something harder, more military. "Tell me, Engineer Trell, what happens to your modern ships when they're hit with a strong electromagnetic pulse, or when their AI cores are corrupted?" "Well, they would," Trell stammered. "They would fail," Walker stated flatly. "Every system would go dark. But ships like Thunder, they were built to fight on, no matter what." He patted a nearby console almost affectionately. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Reed watched this exchange with growing interest. There was definitely more to this human than met the eye. The way he moved through the ship, the way he spoke about its systems. It was almost as if. "Mr. Walker," Reed asked carefully, "exactly what was your role on the Lightning?" Walker smiled that quiet smile again. "Oh, just part of the engineering team," he said, but his eyes told a different story. "Now shall we see what secrets this old girl has been keeping?" The emergency alarms of Station 47 blared to life without warning. Red lights flashed through every corridor as Captain Reed rushed to the command center, his 4 hearts racing. The massive station's defensive systems were automatically powering up, their hum vibrating through the metal floors. "Report," he barked, entering the crowded control room. "Multiple ships just appeared at the edge of our sensor range," the sensor officer replied, his scales pale with fear. "Sir, it's the Dominion." A heavy silence fell over the room. The Dominion was feared throughout this sector of space, an aggressive empire that demanded submission from all they encountered. Their technology was advanced, their methods brutal. "How many ships?" Reed asked, dreading the answer. 5 warships, sir, led by a dreadnought." From his position near one of the old-style monitoring stations, James Walker watched quietly, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. His face showed no surprise, as if he had been expecting this. The main screen flickered, and a harsh face appeared. The Dominion commander's black scales gleamed in the light of his bridge, his yellow eyes narrowed with contempt. "This is Commander Bright of the Dominion fleet," the alien announced. "Your station has been chosen to demonstrate the price of resisting Dominion rule. Surrender now, and some of you may be permitted to live as slaves." Reed stepped forward. "This is a civilian station. We have no military value." "You have 10 minutes to drop your shields," Commander Bright interrupted. "After that, we will destroy you." The transmission cut off. Panic erupted in the control room. Station 47's shields were designed to stop smugglers and pirates, not a Dominion battle fleet. Their weapons would barely scratch the enemy's advanced armor. "Launch our defense ships," Morgan ordered. 3 sleek, modern vessels detached from the station's docking bays. They were the pride of the station's security force, equipped with the latest targeting systems and energy weapons. They never stood a chance. A pulse of strange energy rippled out from the Dominion dreadnought. All 3 defense ships suddenly went dark, their systems completely shut down by the enemy's advanced technology. They drifted helplessly in space. "Some kind of new shutdown field," Trell said, checking his readings. "It's affecting all powered systems it touches. Our shields won't last against it." 5 minutes until they're in firing range," someone called out. Reed felt the weight of command crushing down on him. Over 10,000 people lived on Station 47. Families, children, all now facing death or slavery because the Dominion wanted to make an example of them. "Sir," a quiet voice said. Reed turned to find James Walker standing next to him. The human's calm seemed out of place amid the chaos. "Not now, Walker. We need to." "Captain," Walker interrupted, his voice carrying an authority that made Reed stop mid-sentence. "You have a warship." Reed stared at him. "The Thunder. It's 300 years old. Even if we could power it up, which we can't, it would be no match for." "It's already powering up," Walker said simply. "Has been since you brought it aboard. The startup sequence just completed an hour ago." The entire control room went silent, all eyes turning to the human. "What do you mean it's powering up?" Trell demanded. "None of our systems could even interface with it." Walker smiled, but there was nothing gentle about it now. It was the smile of a warrior. "You know how I said I served on Thunder's sister ship? Well, I didn't tell you when." He straightened his back, and suddenly the elderly engineer was gone, replaced by something else, a veteran commander. "I helped design these ships, Captain Reed. We knew someday humanity's enemies would develop weapons that could shut down advanced technology. So we built our ships to be immune to such attacks. Everything vital has mechanical backups, analog controls, hardened electronics from an age when we had to protect against solar flares and electromagnetic pulses. Through the station's massive windows, they could see the thunder. Lights were flickering to life across its hull. Its massive gun turrets were slowly beginning to rotate. 3 minutes to Dominion firing range, the sensor officer announced. Walker's eyes gleamed. Captain Reed, I need a crew. Volunteers only. I know this is your station, but I'm the only one who knows how to fight with her. He gestured at the ancient warship. And right now, that old piece of junk is the only thing standing between your people and the Dominion. Reed looked at the approaching enemy fleet, then back at Walker. He made his decision. What do you need? 2 minutes to Dominion firing range, the sensor officer announced as Walker led his hastily assembled crew through Thunder's corridors. Captain Reed had come himself, along with Morgan, Trell, and 4 other volunteers. Their footsteps echoed on the metal deck plates as they rushed toward the bridge. This ship can't possibly fight a modern fleet, Trell protested, struggling to keep up. The Dominion's shutdown field will do nothing to us. Walker cut him off, reaching a heavy manual door. He spun the old-fashioned wheel lock with practiced ease. This ship was built to survive anything. The bridge door swung open with a solid thunk. Unlike modern ships with their holographic displays and neural interfaces, the Thunder's bridge was a mix of physical screens, manual controls, and sturdy equipment. Everything looked ancient but purposeful. Captain Reed, take the secondary command station, Walker ordered, sliding into the captain's chair like he'd never left it. His fingers flew across the physical keyboards, and systems started humming to life. Morgan, weapons control. Trell, engineering station. The rest of you, watch and learn fast. 1 minute to Dominion range, Reed reported, looking at the actual glass display in front of him. The numbers were simple, clear, and completely independent of any network that could be hacked or shut down. Walker hit a series of switches, and the bridge lighting shifted to a deep red. A voice emerged from the speakers, female and crisp. Combat systems online. Welcome back, Designer Walker. Admiral Stone, Walker replied to the ship's AI. Initiate Combat Protocol 7 Alpha. Prepare all kinetic weapon systems. Kinetic weapons, Morgan asked from the weapons station, but energy weapons are far more advanced and useless against their shields, Walker explained quickly. The Dominion expects energy weapons. Their defenses are built around stopping them. But Thunder, she throws metal, heavy metal, moving very, very fast. The main screen showed the Dominion fleet approaching. Their ships were sleek, beautiful, and deadly. The dreadnought alone was 3 times Thunder's size. 30 seconds, Reed announced. Walker turned to address the crew. Listen carefully. This ship has 3 key advantages. First, we're immune to their shutdown field because we don't rely on modern electronics. Second, our weapons are simple physics. Mass times acceleration. No fancy energy fields to be countered. Third, he smiled grimly. They think we're harmless. Transfer of command authority recognized, Admiral Stone announced. All systems show ready. But we're not ready. Trell protested from engineering. Half these systems are reading as primitive or outdated. The targeting computers are ancient. The power systems exactly as they should be. Walker cut him off. Every primitive system you see was built this way on purpose. Humanity learned a hard lesson in our first wars among the stars. Technology can be turned against you. Software can be hacked. Energy fields can be countered. But physics never changes. The Dominion commander's face appeared on their screen again. Your time is up. Prepare to. He stopped, noticing for the first time that the ancient relic was powered up. What is this? Walker leaned forward in his chair. This, Commander, is humanity's answer to empires like yours. You think because something is old, It must be weak. That because technology has moved on. The old ways are useless. His voice hardened. You're about to learn how wrong you are. The Dominion ships fired their shutdown field. Everyone on Thunder's bridge held their breath. Except Walker. Nothing happened. Sir, Morgan called out, real awe in her voice. All weapons systems still functioning. The manual targeting systems are actually easier to use than I expected. Walker nodded. Admiral Stone, show them why humanity still keeps ships like Thunder in reserve. All hands, brace for combat maneuvers. He gripped his armrests as the massive ship's engines roared to life. Let's teach them some history. The ancient warship moved with surprising grace, its heavy armor plating gleaming in the starlight. Inside the bridge, physical switches clicked. Manual controls responded instantly to their operator's touch, and targeting computers, simple but reliable, began their calculations. Kinetic weapons locked on target, Morgan reported, her earlier skepticism replaced with growing confidence. Walker's smile was fierce. Admiral Stone, open fire with all forward batteries. Let's remind the galaxy why they used to fear the sound of thunder. The ship's massive rail guns began to spin up, preparing to hurl projectiles at speeds that would make even modern shields meaningless. The real battle was about to begin, and the history lesson was going to be one the Dominion would never forget. Thunder's first shot shook the entire ship. The massive rail gun launched its projectile at 30 kilometers per second, a solid slug of tungsten aimed directly at the nearest Dominion vessel. The enemy ship's advanced shields, designed to stop energy weapons and plasma bolts, did nothing to stop the physical mass moving at meteoric speed. The projectile punched straight through the Dominion ship's hull, leaving a clean hole from front to back. The enemy vessel's lights flickered and died. Direct hit, Morgan shouted, her fingers dancing across the physical targeting controls. Enemy vessel disabled. The Dominion fleet's response was immediate. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked across space toward Thunder. Walker's hands moved smoothly across his controls, and the old warship turned with surprising agility. Most of the shots missed, and those that hit struck the ship's thick armor at an angle. Minimal damage to outer hull. Trell reported from engineering, surprise evident in his voice. These armor plates, they're designed to ablate energy weapons. Walker nodded, not taking his eyes off his displays. Humans learned early that you can't stop every hit. Better to have armor that can take the punch. He turned to Reed. Captain, take us to attack pattern Delta. Morgan, prepare broadsides. Reed moved the ship as directed, still amazed at how responsive the primitive controls were. Thunder turned to present its side to the enemy fleet, revealing rows of additional railgun batteries. Multiple targets locked, Morgan announced. Ready to fire. Admiral Stone, Walker commanded, initiate full broadside barrage. Thunder's entire side lit up as dozens of railguns fired simultaneously. The ship's heavy frame absorbed the recoil as streams of hypersonic projectiles raced toward the Dominion fleet. The enemy vessels tried to evade, but the sheer volume of fire made it impossible to dodge everything. 2 more Dominion ships took critical hits, their shields useless against the physical projectiles. The remaining ships, including the Dreadnought, began evasive maneuvers. They're adapting to our attack pattern, Reed warned. Walker's eyes narrowed. Good. Admiral Stone, activate secondary weapon systems. Secondary weapons online. The AI responded. Point defense grid active. Hundreds of smaller turrets emerged from Thunder's hull, each containing a miniature railgun. These began tracking and firing at incoming missiles and fighter craft that the Dominion ships had launched. Impossible. The Dominion commander's voice crackled over their comm system. That vessel's technology is centuries old. It cannot. Age doesn't matter, Walker interrupted, when the basics are sound. Admiral Stone, show them our special trick. Activate the scattershot protocol. The next broadside was different. Instead of solid slugs, The rail guns fired canisters that burst apart mid-flight, spreading thousands of smaller projectiles in a pattern impossible to evade. The space between Thunder and the Dominion fleet filled with a cloud of hypersonic metal fragments. The effect was devastating. Even the smallest hits caused damage to the enemy ship's sensitive external equipment. Sensor arrays shattered, weapon emitters cracked, and communication dishes were shredded. "Their coordination is breaking down," Morgan reported. "They can't maintain their formation without their linked targeting systems." Walker allowed himself a small smile. The more complex the system, the easier it is to disrupt. "Admiral Stone, prepare main gun for direct fire on the dreadnought. All crews brace for maximum acceleration." Thunder's massive engines roared louder as Walker turned the ship to face the Dominion flagship directly. The main gun, running almost the entire length of the ship's spine, began to power up. Unlike the other railguns, this one was special. "Main capacitors charging," Admiral Stone announced. "Magnetic coils at 70% and rising." "What is that weapon?" Trell asked, staring at his engineering readings in disbelief. "Something we built for taking down capital ships," Walker replied. "A multi-stage accelerator that fires a depleted uranium penetrator at a significant fraction of light speed. We call it the Thunder Hammer." The entire ship hummed with power as the weapon charged. On their screens, they could see the Dominion dreadnought turning to bring its main weapons to bear. But it was too late. "Hammer ready," Admiral Stone reported. Walker's hand hovered over the firing control. "Let's remind them why humanity's ships were built to last." Fire. Thunder lived up to its name as the main gun fired, the recoil pushing the massive ship backward despite its engines firing at full power. The projectile, glowing white-hot from air friction even in space, streaked toward the dreadnought like a man-made comet. The real battle was about to reach its climax. The Thunder Hammer's projectile crossed the space between the ships in seconds. The Dominion dreadnought's shields flared brilliant blue as they tried to stop the incoming round, and failed completely. The massive penetrator punched through the shields like they weren't there and struck the dreadnought's armored hull. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the enemy ship's entire front section exploded outward as the penetrator's kinetic energy released all at once. "Direct hit," Morgan shouted. "Dreadnought's forward sections are completely gone." The bridge crew watched in awe as secondary explosions rippled through the massive enemy vessel. The Dominion flagship, pride of their fleet, had been gutted by a single shot from the obsolete human warship. "Impossible." Commander Bright's voice crackled over the damaged comm system. His image on their screen showed a bridge filled with smoke and sparking equipment. "Our shields are the most advanced in the galaxy. No primitive weapon could." "That's your problem," Walker interrupted, his voice stern. "You think advanced always means better. Thunder's weapons don't care about your shields because they operate on basic physics. Mass times velocity equals impact. No fancy technology can change that equation." The remaining Dominion ships were regrouping, but their formation was ragged. Their sophisticated combat networks had been shredded by Thunder's scattershot barrage, forcing them to fight as individual ships rather than a coordinated fleet. "They're preparing another attack," Reed warned, watching his tactical display. Walker nodded. "Admiral Stone, load shrapnel rounds in all secondary batteries. Morgan, prepare for defensive fire. Trell, divert power to forward armor." "But the forward armor is just metal plates," Trell protested. "There's no energy shielding at all." "Exactly," Walker replied as the enemy ships opened fire. "Watch and learn." Energy beams and plasma bolts struck Thunder's bow. The outer layers of armor ablated away as designed, each layer absorbing and dissipating the energy weapon's power. It was like trying to burn through a book by burning one page at a time. "Return fire, all batteries," Walker commanded. Thunder's rail guns roared again. This time, instead of solid projectiles, they fired canisters that burst into clouds of superheated metal fragments. The Dominion ship's energy shields could stop large objects, but were useless against thousands of tiny pieces moving at relativistic speeds. 2 more enemy ships critically damaged, Morgan reported. The last one is turning to run. But Commander Bright wasn't finished. His damaged dreadnought, despite missing its entire front section, was turning for one final attack. All power to forward weapons. The Dominion commander snarled. Ram them. Let's see how their primitive armor handles that. He's gone mad, Reed said, watching the massive ship accelerate toward them. Walker remained calm. Admiral Stone, calculate intercept point. Morgan, load remaining Thunder Hammer rounds. Trell, I need everything you can give to the main gun's capacitors. The dreadnought's too close, Morgan warned. If we hit it at this range, the explosion could damage us too. Trust the ship, Walker said firmly. Thunder was built to take a punch. The dreadnought grew larger on their screen, its damaged front becoming a massive wall of twisted metal rushing toward them. At the last possible moment, Walker gave his command. All batteries, fire. Thunder unleashed everything it had. The main gun fired first, its Thunder Hammer round striking the dreadnought's center mass. Secondary batteries followed, filling the space between the ships with a storm of metal. The combined kinetic impact hit the Dominion ship like a sledgehammer. The dreadnought's back broke. Literally. The massive vessel split in half, its momentum carrying the pieces past Thunder on either side. Secondary explosions chained through both halves as the enemy ship's power cores finally gave out. Last enemy vessel jumping to faster than light, Morgan reported. They're retreating. The bridge crew sat in stunned silence for a moment before breaking into cheers. They had done it. An obsolete human warship had just defeated a modern Dominion battle fleet. Walker sat back in his chair, allowing himself a small smile. Admiral Stone, damage report. Hull armor at 62% remaining. All weapons systems functional. No critical damage sustained. Not bad for a relic, Walker said, looking at his amazed alien crew members. Sometimes the old ways really are the best ways. Through the bridge windows, they could see Station 47 safe in the distance, its people saved by a 300-year-old warship that everyone had laughed at just hours before. The battle was over, but its legend was just beginning. A week after the battle, Station 47 was buzzing with activity of a different kind. Ships from across the sector had arrived to see the famous ancient warship that had defeated a Dominion fleet. The Thunder sat proudly in its docking bay, its scarred armor and battle-worn hull now badges of honor rather than signs of age. Captain Reed stood with Walker on the station's main observation deck, watching as teams of engineers studied the old warship. The Dominion's retreating from the entire sector, Reed said, his 4 eyes scanning the latest reports. Word of their defeat spread fast. Nobody believed it at first. A 300-year-old human ship destroying their most advanced fleet. Walker nodded, sipping from his ever-present cup of coffee. That's partly why we built ships like Thunder. The psychological impact of being defeated by primitive technology can be as devastating as the physical defeat. Below them, Trell was leading a group of engineers through an inspection of Thunder's weapon systems. The alien engineer had completely changed his tune about obsolete human technology. Now he treated every mechanical system and manual control with near-religious reverence. We've received 17 requests from different stations and colonies, Reed continued. They all want similar ships. Old human warships, specifically. The price of obsolete human technology has tripled in the past week. Not surprised, Walker replied. The Dominion relied too heavily on their advanced technology. They forgot the basics. Every new defense they created was designed to stop an equally advanced attack. He smiled. Nobody thought to defend against good old-fashioned kinetic energy. Morgan approached them, carrying a data pad. Sir, the Station Council has finished their deliberations. They want to convert Station 47 into a defensive hub. They're requesting Earth's help to locate and restore more Thunder-class ships. And, Walker asked, though his knowing smile suggested he already guessed the answer. They want you to oversee the project, Morgan said. They're offering a considerable salary and... Walker raised his hand to stop her. The salary isn't necessary. This was always part of the plan. Reed and Morgan exchanged confused looks. What plan? Why do you think I was here? Walker asked. On this specific station, at this specific time. We knew the Dominion was expanding into this sector. We knew they'd eventually attack a civilian target to prove their power. He gestured at Thunder. And we knew that sometimes the best way to teach a lesson is to let your enemies underestimate you. Understanding dawned on Reed's face. You mean, Earth planned this? Let's just say we believe this sector would benefit from having a few obsolete warships of its own. Walker turned to look out at the stars. Humanity learned long ago that relying too heavily on advanced technology makes you vulnerable. So we maintain fleets of ships like Thunder. Simple, reliable, impossible to shut down with a computer virus or electronic warfare. Below them, a cheer went up from the engineering team. They had managed to activate one of Thunder's secondary railguns, the mechanical loading system working as smoothly as the day it was built. We're getting reports from all over, Morgan said, checking her datapad. The Dominion's enemies are attacking them everywhere, using older technology that their shutdown fields can't stop. Their entire strategy of technological superiority is falling apart. Walker nodded. That's how peace is maintained sometimes. Not through having the most advanced weapons, but by ensuring that even the simplest weapons can still punch through the most sophisticated defenses. The Station Council has another request, Reed said. They want to maintain Thunder as a permanent defense ship, not for salvage anymore, obviously. He looked slightly embarrassed about their original plans to scrap the vessel. Good, Walker replied. She deserves to keep protecting people. That's what she was built for. He turned to face them fully. Now shall we begin planning the station's new defense fleet? I believe I saw some promising old Coalition heavy cruisers in that salvage yard 2 systems over. As they walked away from the observation deck, Reed looked back one last time at Thunder. The Relic had taught them all a valuable lesson. True strength doesn't come from having the newest technology, but from understanding the fundamental principles that never change. In the docking bay below, Thunder's hull gleamed under the station lights, its battle scars now repaired. The ship that everyone had laughed at now stood as a symbol of hope for the entire sector, and a reminder that some old dog still had the deadliest bite.